Hey folks, I have finished reading your Integrative Literature Review Part 1 yesterday and today and have provided copious feedback in your rubric and on your paper. Remember, with the new box view, to find the feedback, you need to hover over the highlighted areas as well as look for the little post-it notes. In my world, they look like blue little squares. Make sure that you go through your paper page by page and look for all of that material. One of the things that I consistently am hearing as well as have heard in the past is that the students report that they are spending so much time trying to understand the integrative literature review, and they spend less time actually doing the literature review. And folks, I want you to know that that is purposeful. You are learning how to do an integrative literature review. So if you're researching and you're studying and you're going back through your research book and you're really studying the Prisma model and you're thinking about how to approach this process, you are doing exactly what you were expected to do. The topic that you're using is less material than the process you are using. I want you to come away understanding the integrative literature review part. So if it feels like this is really awkward and you're not entirely sure and you're having to research and really think about the methodology of this process, know that that is an intentional learning experience, and that is part of the assignment and probably the lion's share of the value of this assignment. I want you to really understand the process. I want you to understand the importance of the rigor of the process and the precision of this process, so that when you graduate and you are sitting in a committee of people and you want to make a process change in the hospital and everyone says, well, let's go do a literature review, you're going to have a clue what that looks like. You're going to know how important it is to have a specific blueprint for these are the databases we're going to use. These are the time parameters we're going to use, and we're going to use them meaningfully. We're going to pick what kinds of research we're going to look at. We're going to look at all qualitative or all quantitative, maybe mixed methodologies or pilot studies, Delphi studies. What is it? What study design do you need? You're going to look at the keywords. What are the primary words in your research question that you're going to use to develop your keyword set, and then your Boolean phrases. Remember, Boolean phrases are the collection of words that you put together to narrow down and make your research process more precise. So as you go through these steps, as you pull all of this material together, that's what I want you to learn. I want you to be able to take this process and apply it to any topic you come across. Your topic for this assignment was articulated to be about the nurse educator role in some way. So if you've gotten feedback that your topic is off topic, that you've not focused on the nurse educator role in some way, then you're going to need to change your PICO. You're going to have to tweak it or bend it or reword it, or you may have to start over to find a topic that's important. And again, part of the reason that we have you focusing on the role of the nurse educator is because when you leave here, the thing that you've researched needs to be relevant to the role in which you're going to pursue post-graduation. And that's going to be the nurse educator role. So that's the reason that we're using an integrative literature review process, as well as the topic of focus to be a nurse educator role. It's not random. There's an intentionality to it. So if you have given feedback that your work needs revision, you're going to want to do that revision and make clear what your plan is before you start part 2. If you have already started collecting articles, but your part 1 is not correct, you're going to want to put the brakes on part 2, go back to part 1 and rethink it. The idea behind developing and following the Prisma model and being precise in your language and your process is so that the articles that you locate are relevant to your topic, are scholarly, are peer-reviewed, and are relevant, especially in a time frame and a population standpoint. All of that fits so that it can be replicated so that someone can come behind you and say, okay, these were the keywords they used. This is a search database that they use. These are the filters that student applied. And voila, I found, if not identical, very similar articles. There should be a significant portion of overlap. If you write part one and you're vague, or you write part one and then don't follow it, there is no ability to say that what you found was related to the question you were asking. So again, that comes back to part one is your blueprint. Part two follows your blueprint. So if you are imprecise, or you aren't clear, or you're too broad, or you're too narrow, part two is going to be really, really tough. The value of your finding, the result of your integrative literature review, is only accurate, is only relevant, can only be used as a tool in decision making if there is rigor in your process. If you wing this, if you throw something together, if you say you're going to do something in your part one, but then do something else in part two, you've lost the rigor. You cannot, in good faith, in part three say, this is what I found, and this is why it has meaning, if you have turned the process on its ear. I know this feels tedious, folks, and I know that you're like, I just want this thing to go away. You're a graduate nurse. When you're done, you're going to have a degree that less than 5 or 6% of the nurses in the United States have. I personally don't like it when the last thing I do is really hard, so I appreciate if you're banging your head against the wall and you're like, make it go away. But you need to know this stuff. It's going to be relevant whether you're in an academic institution or whether you are at the bedside practicing as a nurse educator. So, I'm looking on my notes. Okay, one thing to remember. I think I hit most of them if I saw it in your paper. Go back into your instructions. There's a page on it that discusses your level of evidence. Let's see if I can find it. It's one of those things that you can never find when you're looking for it. Oh, here it is. Okay. This level of evidence. There we go. You're going to see, use this so that when you assess your level of evidence, you do not accidentally include material that should not be on it. I am going to tell you now, in your matrix, there should not be gray material, gray literature, opinions, commentaries, editorials. None of that should be on your matrix. The other thing that has to be excluded from your matrix is level one existing systematic or integrative literature reviews. I know they're the gold standard. I know they're at the tippy top and they're the best of the best, but they are also secondary material. They are the roll-up of somebody else's synthesis of existing material. You can use a little bit of that in your background if you'd like, but you will not use that in your matrix, primarily because it is not a primary source of literature. It's a roll-up of somebody else's stuff, and secondarily, because they've done something that I'm asking you to do. So you can't use their thing to do your thing. And when you're doing an integrative literature review, you always use primary peer-reviewed scholarly research, okay? So no websites, no dissertations, no editorials, no poster presentations, none of that. All of it's articles. Okay, so we've covered level of evidence. I've talked with you about Boolean phrases. If you have not put those Boolean phrases and keywords in your plan in part one, you need to correct that. Okay, let's talk just a minute okay, so you've done what Dr. Hedgens said. You've gone in and you've added all these filters and you've narrowed down the number of search engines you're using. You've used, let's say you've used 2. Let's say you've used EBSCO and Ovid. And you've gone through and you've done your keywords and you've only found 6 articles. And you know you need 20 to 25. What I'm going to encourage you to do is systematically adjust one thing at a time from part one. So if you go in and you follow your blueprint exactly how you've written it, and you are too narrow and you don't find enough articles, then you're going to start adjusting your keywords. Maybe one of your keywords is too narrow. Play with your keywords first. And that's really common, folks. Sometimes you think, well, this will find what I think it's going to find. And you turn out that the literature says it's something else. So adjust your keywords first. Play with that. The other thing you can do is pick a third or fourth database. I really don't want you to go. 3 would be what my comfort level would be. 4 if you've got a really narrow topic. But pick something different. EBSCO and CINAHL have lots of overlap. Maybe use Medline or go out to Ovid or ProQuest. Pick a sampling of different ones. If that doesn't get it, so you've adjusted keywords and you've played with it, you've added another database, increase your year parameter. Really want everybody starting out 5 years. But if you have a intervention that maybe has been around a little bit longer but just isn't used very commonly, back it out into the 10-year framework, but that year expansion should be the last thing you do. So adjust your keywords, maybe add a database, or increase your year parameter. If you've done those 3 things and you are at a wall, I want you to contact me and let's talk through how can we grow your body of findings in a systematic way. Again, this isn't some random, let me see if this works. If you have to make changes in part 1 to get an adequate number of sampling research, then be sure you go back to part 1 and that you add that extra database, or you revise those keywords. It is not uncommon to go back to part 1 and revise once you've done your matrix. That's okay. This is a progressive paper. Part 1 doesn't go away because you've started part 2. You're going to refine part 1 as you go through this process. You're also going to refine part 1 when you get ready to do part 3. But just breathe. Let's just focus on getting the matrix done. Okay. I think that's it for that. If at any point in getting ready to do part 2, you feel like you're guessing, please ask questions. You are not supposed to be out there figuring this out on your own. You're learning. So yes, I want you to use your resources. Yes, I want you to use Gray and Burns. Who's the other guy? You know what your authors are. Completely a blank. Your research book. Burns. There you go. Gray, Grove, and Burns. So use your resources. Use the Ask the Professor link. Look at what your peers are asking. That's great. But you do not have to be out there struggling. If you feel like you need some support, reach out. Let me talk you through it. Let's work through it together so that when you are done, you have a quality project. What is more important to me is that you understand the process, so that after graduation you can replicate the process with a level of rigor and integrity. So let's work towards that. Real quick, let's talk about next week. You have your portfolio part 2. We make revisions to part 1 based on feedback that you've been provided. I'm going to go back and look. Have they made changes? In part 2, you've got 2 sections that are due. The first one is your goals and the steps that you will use to get to the goals. So a goal for year 1, 5, and 10. So that's 3 goals. And then steps in how you'll accomplish goal 1, 5, and 10. I would just do a goal for year 5, a goal for 1, 5, and 10. Just one goal. If you want to be an overachiever, it's okay. The important part is that you have some steps in place for how you will achieve that goal. The steps are as important as the individual goals are. So if you have a goal, you need 2 to 3 steps on how you're going to accomplish that. Once you've done that, the last thing you're going to do is the professional development section. This is a reverse chronological order of things that you have done to professionally develop. Think about things that you've earned continuing education credits for, or things that you have attended training or seminars for. This is not formal education like you've done with your master's course. This is stuff that is specific to your professional development in your role. This is also not promotions or rank changes. This is specific to your educational development that keeps you current in your practice or helps you advance your practice outside of formal education. Put a date if you know it. Okay. A year is adequate. If you happen to know the month, that's even better. I'm going to encourage you to embed these in your portfolio, not attach them, so that they're easier to view. And you probably want to put them on their own landing page so that you're not having to scroll all over creation to find your content. Oh, and your practicum log. Practicum log number 2 is due. No, practicum log number 1 is due. So when you do your practicum log, you're old hats at this. You know what you're doing. Make sure you put your time in and that your time matches what is in your log. I don't feel any concern about that. If you do have questions, holler at me, but otherwise I think you're good to go. Get these 2 things for this week done and off your plate as soon as you can. I really want you to spend the next 10 days really thinking about pulling your articles and getting ready to do your matrix. Which isn't due this week, it's due the following week. But what I want you to be focusing on this week, in addition to those other things, is to begin to pull your articles and organize them, okay? And we'll talk more about the matrix and how any questions you have about that as time comes. But for now, look at the feedback that you were provided, reach out with questions, make revisions, and get the work done for this week. And take a deep breath. Know that I'm here. Know that I am praying for you, that I'm thinking about you. I know what I'm asking you to do is challenging. Madeline's checking out what's in the bag. I'm here. You do not have to be trying to figure this out on your own. So use your resources and use them wisely. Let me know how I can support you and how I can pray for you folks. Hang in there.